Gardner.
Okay, folks, it is just past 7 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. And we would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee and the neutral peoples. It always sounds good in my head, but not as good when I read it out loud. So, so for confirmation of the agenda, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Wilby, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated February 15th of 2022 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest tonight? Our Deputy Mayor Fisher has two conflicts, items 8.1 with the splash pad assessment and 8.4 the grants, and this is due to being a member of the Lions Club. Are there any other disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor On.
Yeah, I'll be the same with the grants because I like the ag societies in there and the horticultural societies in there. So. Okay.
All right. Thank you for pointing that out. All those in favor of, oh no, sorry, there's no motion for that. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I get mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McClellan, second by Councillor Chartrand, that Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as printed and circulated. That's the regular meeting of February 1st of 2022 and the public meeting of February 1st of 2022. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. We don't have any public meeting hearings or delegations this evening. Accounts payable. I will
sorry,
sorry,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Did we adopt the agenda or not? I can't remember.
Yes, we did. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I get a mover and a seconder for the accounts, please? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Morrison, that the accounts payable in the amount of $1,283,618.63 be approved for payment. Comments or questions for Paula on the accounts? Oh, Councillor On, go ahead.
I just had a question, Paula, and I did email you a screenshot. There is two exact same payments on there. Of course, I don't have my iPad with me. It's on the CIBC Visa for 2022 membership. It just says the amount's 14,001, I believe, but there's just two of the exact same payments. And I'm just wondering if that's a repeat or if that's a...
I'm assuming it's going to be two different memberships for two different individuals, but I'll have to look it up. And I didn't bring the payables home with me tonight.
Okay.
So I will get back to you, Zoe. Okay.
That's fine. And what is the membership for? Because that wasn't on there either. It just said...
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look it up for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on the payables? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Number 8, reports and recommendations of municipal officers. And I presume I'm going to the CAO for the splash pad. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Thank you. So I'll go through my report just briefly to highlight a few things. Some of this is a regurgitation, pardon me, of my previous report when we spoke about this probably about a month ago, I believe. No, it was before, it was in December. So a couple just of points to make out. There's still an option here to choose whether you want to go with a flow through system, a holding tank system, or a recirculating system. I'll speak to that a little bit later. In speaking with the Lions Club in terms of that appointment to that, so I guess I'll call it a working committee. They're looking from somebody at staff level that can be able to support them and liaison between the municipality and the Lions Club. So I am recommending that they appoint myself to that position. I've also kind of had some conversations back and forth with the Seaforth Lions in consultation with them, and I believe it's probably prudent for the splash pad itself, that once council gives direction, and assuming they support it, that we create a letter of understanding that sort of documents everything with respect to the splash pad itself in terms of that capital investment. And then we also have a formal agreement prepared with the Lions Club that basically outlines what everybody's doing. I think it'd be beneficial between all the parties, just to be clear. It's not trying to be an onerous agreement. It's just to basically outline who's doing what, who's responsible for what, so that both the Lions Club and ourselves have a very clear understanding of what the expectations are. And so there's no misunderstanding, there's no verbal agreements that are made at some point in time in the past that make it difficult for us to try to figure out the path going forward. So those are the recommendations. When I get into the actual report, I'm going to skip over into the site servicing component, because I think there were two things that I believe council wanted a further update on, and that was the site servicing side of it and the water system capacity concerns. So our Barry Mills, unfortunately, or fortunately for him, but unfortunately for us, is on vacation, enjoying the sunny, warm climates. But I wanted to just emphasize the fact in site servicing, I think Barry has been working pretty diligently over the last couple months, working with various contractors, working in consultation with the Seaforth Lions Club, and has come up with a solution to address the servicing issue. And just for everybody, council's reminder, one of the challenges we had is in the original contract for the Goderich Street work, or the connecting link contract, it included a component where we were reconnecting the servicing to the Lions Club Park. And we ran into a challenge when we tried to go through directional bore, which was the original intention. It wasn't successful. So Barry's been working since that time to come up with a alternate solution, working with various contractors and exploring different alternatives. We finally came to the conclusion, and in consultation with the Osable Bayfield Conservation Authority, the Lions Club, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, just to simply do an open excavation across through the creek, install 3 conduits into that creek, and then we can pull our water lines through those conduits. 2 of those conduits will be used to put 2 new 2-inch water service lines, and we'll keep the 3rd one just in case of some point in time in the future we need it. So all that work is going to be incorporated into the existing contract, or the remainder of that contract, for that connecting link project. So that piece has kind of been resolved in terms of getting servicing, or new servicing, to the splash, or not to the splash pad, but to the Lions Park, just as a whole. In terms of the water system capacity, they also did review their capacity issues and the consumption in the overall Seaforth water system. And we also did some analysis with respect to what the predicted water volume would be. And even assuming 60 cubic meters per day in peak periods, we also had to count, and I got to give credit to Mr. Wood from the Seaforth Lions Club. He noted the fact that we actually probably spent almost half that every year filling up that little wading pool we used to have at the Lions Club Park, which has now been decommissioned and it's gone, but we would fill it, flush it, fill it, flush it every day when it was in use. So they were already using probably about 27 cubic meters a day just in the operation of that wading pool. So taking that into account, and taking into account what the 60 cubic meters per day for the splash pad would be, we're only looking at about an extra 33 cubic meters per day above and beyond what we were already incurring, I guess, on a historical basis. So that being said, our public works staff and Mr. Mills is confident that the capacity of the water system can support the splash pad. On the following conditions though, if water restrictions are necessary due to limited system storage or well capacity, so if one of the wells go down for whatever reason and we have limited capacity, we would temporarily close the splash pad. And we've had conversations with the Seaforth Lions Club about this. They totally understand that, totally agree with it, have no issues with that. And the other piece I think that's important for council to understand is that somehow the water system, which is a completely separate entity than, let's call it municipality here in East, it's its own entity, it's its own cost center. That cost needs to be recovered somewhere. Okay, so whatever the cost is for the water that goes to the Seaforth Lions Park, we're going to install meters onto those water lines. We're going to track what that consumption is, and somebody's got to pay. And so the way we've brought this proposal forward is the Seaforth Lions, in their original request, asked that they not be responsible for the water cost. They were going to build it. They were going to supply all the capital upfront cost, but they didn't want to have to pay the water cost. And so that piece has to be managed, and that's a potential cost for the municipality somewhere down the line. And I'll speak to that a little bit in the financial considerations. I spoke about the water meters. I won't go through the staff evaluation other than to highlight a couple points I added on here. In terms of the actual flow-through system, we talked about the potential that there might be some periods of temporary bans and potential shutdown of the splash pad. In terms of recirculation system, I believe I mentioned this in the last meeting we spoke about this, but I actually included it in the report this time. There have been several municipalities when we did a bit of our initial consultation that actually put in recirculating systems to start with, but subsequently ended up converting those to flow-through systems just because they ran into some operational challenges with those recirculating systems. I don't have the specifics of what those challenges were, but it's just good for us to note that there are some challenges with those recirculating systems, and they may present some problems in the future that we might, if we went that route, we might end up investing a lot of dollars and then defaulting back to a flow-through system anyway. In terms of the repurposing one, I think one of the other issues I think I mentioned as well at the last meeting, but I also included in the report, just the challenge, there might be some challenge in terms of putting what I'll call a holding tank, an underground holding tank on the site just because of that bedrock. So obviously we're dealing with bedrock at the creek. I don't know what the grade change is between that and where the splash pad would be located, but there's a potential, I'm assuming that bedrock will be relatively flat in that area, but I don't know what depth of overburden we've got there to be able to put a holding tank down in the ground. So we may have to look at a really flat holding tank, that hasn't that much depth if we're going to go that route, or we may have to consider something where you have a holding tank above ground if we're going to go that route. Getting into the financial impacts, this is a little bit, I'll try not to berate this. We're looking at probably with the flow through system, roughly of about $7,000 to $12,000 a year in water costs. If we go with a recirculating system, that can push that cost up significantly higher, getting into that sort of $13,000 to $19,000 system. And the holding tank system operationally is probably pretty similar in terms of operational costs as the flow through system, not operationally significantly different. A piece too that we drilled into a little bit too in terms of information is the Huron East Seaforth Community Development Trust also made a commitment of $10,000 a year to the operational cost for the splash pad for the next 10 years. And so I've tried to incorporate it into the financial picture. Speaking with the trust and speaking with them as well as with the Seaforth Lions Club, I wanted to make sure that we all mutually understood that depending upon which system we select, that those funds would be directed to whichever way is the most appropriate in terms of an operational cost. And so in a flow through system, there's some electricity costs that the Seaforth Lions will incur. We're kind of giving them first dibs on that $10,000. Whatever is outstanding of that would be used towards water cost. So when I get down to my summary table at the end of my report, I've tried to account for the fact that we as Huron East might end up having some operational costs with this, regardless of what system council ultimately chooses to use. In terms of the capital, the Seaforth Lions Club is committed to including that capital cost in whatever component or option you choose as part of their fundraising campaign. But you're probably looking at around $6,000 a year, depending upon how much it costs for electricity for the Seaforth Lions and how much it costs for closing and opening costs for them to complete that work. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of the splash pad, and I'll pass it on to you, Mr. Mayor, to open up the debate.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Chartrand.
Yeah, thank you. Brad, one of the things that came up at one of the splash pad meetings was the possibility, if we go with the flow through system, the possibility of redirecting that some of that water to fill the big pool up, because they're always topping off the big pool. So the thought process was, could we route a line that way with a valve that whenever they needed to top off the pool, they could utilize that excess water that would be going in the creek? Where are we at with that?
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Councillor Chartrand. Actually, I didn't include that in my report, and that's my mistake. We have had conversations with the Seaforth Lions in terms of that is certainly an option that they wish to pursue in terms of being able to have that option. I don't think they've worked through whether technically it can function and work properly, but they're certainly willing to consider it, and that's certainly inclusive to what they're trying to do. The question is whether or not it functionally will work and whether they can get it to work the full way that we intend it to be. But that certainly is an option. So certainly diverting some of that, I guess, overflow back to the pool system to use it for a top up and run it through the pool filtration and rechlorination system for that top up period.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good utilization rather than so-called wasting the water, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of council at this time? Councillor Steffler.
Yes, well, I certainly agree with the splash pad down at the park, and I made the motion of the trust for the $10,000 for 10 years, and there certainly is no strings attached to that. We realize how important the splash pad is to Seaforth, and I would certainly like to see it get up and going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I know my preference would be, if council wants to go ahead with this, that the holding tank be utilized. And I realize it costs more to implement that, but it also shows that we are trying to be better for the environment, and it will hopefully reduce the costs down the road. And it's the year-over-year costs after construction's there that we'll always be dealing with. So if we can help minimize those costs, I think that's just the proper way to go. But at this point, if I don't have any other questions of council, staff are asking for direction from council. And so somebody does need to make a motion for us to say yay or nay. Councillor Steffler.
I will certainly make a motion that we go ahead with splash pad.
Okay, is that just the flow through system, or is that with the holding tank, or is that with the recycling system?
I certainly agree with you, Mr. Mayor. The tank would be the best way to go, but whatever way they go, our 10,000 a year for 10 years is on the table, no matter what way they go.
Okay, Councillor Chartrand.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, the motion is to go with the flow through system with the holding tank.
That's my understanding, yes.
So that's the repurposing system?
Yes.
Yes. And I second Joe's motion.
Okay. Any other comments or questions of members of council at this time? Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a general question or comment. I'm in favor of the motion that's on the table, but will there be some research put into this holding tank? CEO Brad has mentioned that we're into some bedrock there, for instance. So it sounds like in-ground tank might be out of the question. I mean, I don't want to say, I know what you're trying to say and try to do. I just don't want to see us spend $100,000 trying to put a tank in there either. I mean, it has to make sense as well. So That
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was going to be a study or somebody was going to do a little bit more research into it, but I'm in favor of the motion as it stands.
Okay, just to add a comment to that, I did have a brief discussion with the CAO this afternoon, and I had mentioned this, and he had brought up about the bedrock concern to me. But as he also pointed out, the pool is sunk into the ground there, so the bedrock may not be everywhere in the park. And I agree with you, Councillor McClellan. We don't want to plan and go ahead and spend a whole bunch of money if we can't do something. But my assumption is at this point that to determine whether bedrock's going to be a problem, a few test drill holes, which are probably fairly inexpensive to do, would be the easiest way to go about it. Councillor Chartrand.
Yeah, question to Brad. So if we're going this way, wouldn't the cost of that underground holding tank be part of the project as far as the fundraising project part of it? Wouldn't be coming out of your niece's pocket?
No, it certainly, based upon conversations with the Seaforth Lions Club, they were prepared to include the capital cost for whichever option council chose.
Okay, thought so.
Yeah, so, and just to speak to the underground tank issue, I think certainly, you know, maybe not right at this point in time, but when things the frost comes out of the ground, we probably could go out there and do some pretty small test pits just to find how deep we get. I don't think we need to have a huge amount of depth. We're not looking about winter storage in terms of winter water in here. We're really just trying to store some of this water that it's available for, you know, if we have a fire emergency, if we're doing any kind of dust control for construction or our road works, so that we'll at least have some water in there and we can make some repurposing of it. And it might be actually the type of tank that can be used for pumping off towards the pool system. And I think if we work with that plan, I think we can incorporate it into the overall flow through concept. And it doesn't have to, I'm not trying to suggest it has to be this enormous tank that takes the full, you know, 60 cubic meters a day type volume, but some reasonable volume of water that makes functional sense.
Yeah.
Based upon some of the constraints.
Thanks.
Any other questions of council before I call the vote? All those in favor of the motion as it was read? And motion carries. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Larry.
No, I was muted. That's my fault. Sorry. There's actually holding tanks for the washrooms on the north end of the pavilion. 2 of them.
Okay, so they were able to dig down in there in that area.
Yeah, I don't know if they did dynamiting or not, but on the north end of the pavilion, there's actually 2 tanks for the wastewater, which get pumped from like through the season.
Okay.
So there's holding tanks there now to start with.
Okay, good. Actually, Mr. CAO, in fairness, since council has approved of the project or one of the options, what would be the steps going forward? Who gets involved first, or who does what to start this going?
I think that the first step will obviously Mr. Wood's on the call, but I think we would work directly with, or I would work directly with the Seaforth Lions to move this forward. And I'll report on a regular basis to council on any updates that might come forward. I'm sure the Seaforth Lions is pleased and happy that council supported this project and move it forward. And I think certainly that'll help them in terms of their fundraising campaign and going forward.
Okay, all right, thank you. We go to 8.2, renewal of the Integrity Commissioner.
And this will be, I'll let my clerk speak to this. Jessica?
Yep, so this is just our renewal for the Integrity Commissioner. He was appointed 3 years ago on a 3-year term. So Municipal Act does require that we do need an Integrity Commissioner as part of our Conflict of Interest Act. We also appointed Airden Bearless as our closed meeting investigator and ombudsman at that time as well. And since then, we haven't had any complaints. We've only spent, I think it was around $1,200 for our services with Aaron Bayerless for the 3 years that we did have him. So he doesn't charge on a contract or a yearly term. It's just for the services that we use him for. We did do the planning, I believe, in conjunction with Huron County. They did renew for a 3-year term. So following suit with Huron County, we just would follow suit for another 3-year term with them as well. And include the other 2 services as closed meeting investigator and ombudsman as we did 3 years ago.
Okay, all right, thank you. I will get a mover and a seconder, and then I'll read the motion and ask for questions. Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor On, that the municipality of Huron East approve the renewal of the appointment of Arid and Bayerless LLP as the Integrity Commissioner, closed meeting investigator, and ombudsman for the Huron East for a 3-year term. Any other comments or questions of council? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. 8.3, assessment summaries.
Okay, here is the 2022 assessment summary for council's review. Now, this report is a little out of order to the budgeting process now because we've bumped the budget process up in the year. So prior to us receiving the actual assessment roll from MPAC at mid-December. So it's a little bit late for the budget process. So I'll try and get this in earlier next year so that it's a little more relevant information for council. But I just wanted to point out that the 2020 assessments are being rolled forward again for the 2022 year, as well as the 2023 year. So assessments will remain at the 2020 values for another 2 years yet. With that being said, MPAC is still out there doing assessments for any changes to properties, and those assessments are being recognized and updated. It's just being updated to 2016 values, not the current values of 2022. And without the tax shift, without the shifts between the classes on the assessment shifts, it's nice to note that for the 2022 assessments, the farmland is just under 70% of our total assessments. But then when you look at the weighted assessment and their portion of the taxation that they're paying just over 36%. So about half of their assessment they're coming up with. And then the residential on the flip side, residential 2022 assessments at 27%. And then when we look at the weighted assessment and their portion of the taxation that they're paying approximately 57% of the taxation. So that just gives an idea for council and ratepayers to know how that assessment and the weighted assessment works. So when we look at I use the actual rates for Huron East, notional rates for Huron County, because Huron County rates aren't set as of yet. So the notional rate is just raising the same levy as the previous year for them. And then the education rates have been set and they remain at the 2021 rates. So they're the same for 2022. And then when we look at the percent increases by the wards, this does not include the special area rates. So this is just the general Huron East taxation, county, and education. The percent increase ranges from just under 2% increase in the Gray ward up to an 8.23% in the McKillop ward. So that's what the assessment's gonna impact on the ratepayer. So with that being said, the table shows the public and how it will impact their property taxes. So they can basically estimate approximately a 2% increase if they're in the Gray ward, or just over 8% in McKillop ward. And then add on any special area rates.
Any
So that's
questions Any questions for Paula based on that information? I did like the comparison between the two charts, Paula. I thought that was really beneficial to see what each group should have paid if everything was equal across the board and what it ended up being for everybody. Councillor Deal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Paula, once the impact gets onto the new, what is it, in 2023, they're going to get back into these updates. What kind of change will we see? Like compared to the rural and the urban, what are we going to see?
So it's anticipated that they will go out and do a new reassessment in 2023 year that will be effect for 24 and the next 3 years following 2024. What that shift is going to be, it's hard to say right now, but when the 2021 reassessment was being analyzed and being prepared, we were seeing a shift from rural to the urban. So there was more of a shift from the farmland back to the residential. And I believe that's going to be the trend still. It may not be as much of a noticeable impact with the way land sales are going, but the houses are keeping pace too. So it's unknown.
Out of $40,000 an acre, I don't think, but thanks, Paula.
Yeah.
If it continues at 40 an acre, it'll start to pull ahead of residential again at that point. Okay, if there's no other questions, that was just for information purposes. Next, we have 8.4, which is the grants. And I'm not sure who wants to start off this conversation.
I can start a little bit. Just to summarize, any requests that have been received were included in the chart. And I just noted that in 2021, council provided a one-time COVID funding grant to the small halls, the 3 small halls, in the amount of $500 to help offset the impacts of COVID-19. And I just noted that maybe council would want to consider providing that grant again as the impact continued through 2021 for those halls. And they weren't able to have people in and rent out the space. And another item that I just wanted to point out to council is, again, with the budget process moving forward in the year, I have communicated to our anybody that has put in a request for a grant that for 2023 grant and going forward, they're going to have to submit by the end of October.
That's good. That'll keep it in line with our budgeting process.
Yeah.
Actually, Paula, just a comment on those charts that you gave us. I appreciate the comment that you're not getting it to us till now, but you really couldn't provide that information until after the budget was done anyways, could you?
No, because the organizations were used to submitting by the end of January.
Right.
And yeah, by the time I followed up with the ones that hadn't submitted, and yeah, just bumping the budget caught me off guard this year. So
no, I'm sorry, not this, the pie charts you did for the previous report.
Oh,
yeah. Like you really couldn't do that before the budget's approved, could you?
Well, I couldn't do it before I had the roll from MPAC, and I get that like mid-December. So by the time I get it uploaded and analyzed and balanced and everything, we're looking into January.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, where would anybody like to start as far as what we're going to do with grants? Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were leaving grants already or not. I just want to dwell in on that, the grant or the money paid to the hall boards. I don't think we want to forget them. And I didn't know whether through to Paula, if they were going to monitor them or if it's something you want to address right now, that's all.
I would like to address it now if possible, because this is just helping offset the impacts of 2021.
Do you think $500 is enough?
I think $500 is enough to help offset with the utility costs and their costs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd be prepared to make that motion if you wanted that.
Okay. We can add that in when we do the actual motions. We'll add that as a part of it.
Perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll make notes.
Okay. Were you going to second that, Diane, or did you have another comment? You were going to second. Okay.
Yes, thank
Is
you.
there anything else that anybody would like to see either added or removed from the list at this time? Okay, I just have one other comment, and I guess it must be later on the agenda, but I read the actual rules, I guess, for council as far as grants and that go. There's one other thing that I've always been told from accountants or bookkeepers or whatever, is that when you're doing grants, grants should be something that you consider has a very limited time factor if it's over multiple years, or it's a one-time only thing. Grants are not something that we are part of the sustained cash flow for an organization. I don't know if council wants to take that into consideration. And I realize none of these are big amounts, but that statement makes sense to me, is that we have a responsibility for our books. Now, there are some things on here that we have a responsibility for if they can't make the grade anyways, like when it comes to a cemetery, if in fact they can't make things work, we will be on the hook for it. So whether we leave that in the grant category or whether we just put that someplace else in the budget just to show that we're doing financial assistance to them year after year is fine. But I'm just curious if anybody had any comments about things that we just give money to every year to be part of their cash flow. And I don't have anyone in particular, but all right, let's say the Huron Plowmen's Association. I don't have a problem with it, and it's only $250, but when you start adding up a whole bunch of these little ones, they do add up after a while. You know, when you look at the Van Egmond House, that to me is a little bit different. That there is something that we use as an attraction to Huron East as a whole to begin with. And that's, to me, not much different than the money that we put into our museum. Not that I really call our museum a real museum, but the same concept. Does anybody else have any comments about what the rules should be or how we go ahead? Councillor Steffler.
I agree with the way it is now. And you mentioned the Huron Commons Association. They contribute a lot in money, but into our young people of our area and keep them interested in agriculture, like the sodbusters and whatnot. So it costs plowmen a lot of money, and they don't have a lot of ways of raising money. So for $250, I think we're well getting our money back. And for the Van Egmond House, certainly I agree with it and whatnot. I agree with what the list is now.
Okay, all right. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to comment as well. I think we do a good job of going through this list, you know, every year. And if there's something on there we don't want, we take it out. I think we put some good focus on it, and the money that we spend, I think, are spent well. And I'd like to just pile on what Joe said as well, or Councillor Steffler. I think the Plowmen's Association, that's a must. We live in a rural area. I think that would be, you know, bite the hand that feeds us. It's only $250, and they do a lot of good work. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no problem with it, and that's fine. You did jog my memory on something, so I'm just going to make a note of it just to bring it up during county issues. So. Okay, all right, that's fine then. So we do have a mover and a seconder, I believe. Okay, and go ahead, Paula.
Mayor, I just wanted to note that on the schedule, North Huron Community Food Share. Last year, we had provided $1,800 to them. They put a request in again for 2022. I did not include an amount in there because I wasn't sure, because I knew we were very close to the $20,000 budgeted limit. So now when we've added in the 3 COVID grants to the small halls, we're about 1,300 over the budget now. So I just wanted to point that out to council. If they wanted to add something in for the food share, we'll have to add that in.
Yeah, and thanks for raising that. I remember reading the letter, and I think they said there was 92 families in Huron East, if I remember correctly, and they were asking for about $2,000. But and I don't know if we asked staff to look into this after the fact last year or not. But I know that the Seaforth Food Bank gets families from South Huron from time to time, because you can only get so much from any particular food bank, but you're not prevented from going to other food banks. And having said that, I wonder if there are also families from North Huron that come to some of the Huron East food bank areas. And if in fact that trade-off is happening, is that any different than what we've set up with a lot of the arenas, where we used to give $500 to that municipality and they used to give us $500 back? And we just got rid of all of that because we all live in the same community and we use each other's services. And so before I'd even want to hand out the $2,000 this year, I think it'd be really fair to find out if in fact there is, let's call it cross-border shopping. And if it works out fairly even, then why would money transpire or change hands from one group to another? Also, I think Huron East does a good job of trying to help out with the food banks, maybe even more than some of the other areas. And if those other councils did as much as Huron East did, then maybe they wouldn't be come knocking on our door looking for donations. I don't know if there's any other comments from council members. Councillor Steffler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Huron East does an amazing job for the food bank and Seaforth. On your comment on them going from one food bank to the other, they're kept pretty close contact. It's all on computer, and they should share the names of who's getting what, where. So if there's cross-border shopping going on, I don't think it'll be very much.
I think it does happen, because I don't think it's against any rules. I think it's allowed, and I'm not complaining about it. The bottom line is, if people need the service, it's good that we offer the service. It's just that if there's 92 families from Huron East using North Hurons, I'm curious if there's some families close to the Huron East border that are also coming from North Huron into Huron East and using that service. That's all. And I don't want names. And if the food banks are keeping records, all I would just want to know is the number of users going both ways. That's all. Go ahead, Joe. You were off mute for a second. You're muted there. There you go. That's better.
Yeah, you definitely could not get any names from the food bank, but they would certainly give you a good idea if there is anything going on, people going, from Seaforth to Clinton to Wingham to whatnot. So they would be more than happy, I think, to give you that information.
Okay. If we want a report, should a report have a motion of council for information? I'm not.
I think if we're just looking for direction, if council wants to see a report in terms of who's using the food bank and from where, and vice versa, for, let's say, if a majority of them are from North Huron or a majority are from South Huron, just a sense as to how much is going back and forth. I think I understand what you're concerned with, but you just want to have a recognition that there's some balance there to some degree.
Yeah, and that would help us decide whether we felt the $2,000 request was justifiable or if it should be a different amount.
Okay.
So since the 2,000 isn't in the list, as Paula pointed out here right now, and there is no specific deadline for if council wants to do that, I would say if we ask staff just to try and inquire about that, bring back that information, and then council could at a future date deal with the request from North Huron and decide what we want to do, if that's acceptable to council. Okay, I see a few heads nodding. So go ahead, Councillor Chartrand.
So I guess I'll make a motion to accept the grant list the way it is. And if we do decide at a later date to put that $2,000 in, I guess we can always do that. But what she has in her report today is good with me.
Okay. I have checked with Jessica, but I thought we already had a mover and a seconder, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. We had Councillor McLellan move it and Councillor Deal second it with the addition of the COVID funding for the halls.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. So are there any other questions on the report and the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to receive the reports of the municipal officers. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Deal, that Huron East Council received the following reports of municipal officers as presented. 1, the CAO, 2, the clerk, 3, the finance manager, treasurer, deputy clerk. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. We are down to correspondence.
I think we have one item there, Mr. Mayor, I believe.
This was one of the things that I couldn't remember when I said I had a couple questions for you, Brad, and it's good for me to ask the question here in front of council. So I understand what they want to change. I have two concerns. One is that they're asking for the government to make a change, but there isn't direction in really what to change to, and I'm always afraid of what could be down the road. The other thing is that Huron East has, I'm going to say, I believe we have fared fairly well with the system that's in place at the moment. I'm going to say both of them are very accessible to the public, but when we do get a complaint, it's always been fairly easy for it to come back to council to have a discussion, and we haven't entered into a lot of situations where there was a lot of big dollars involved to clear up a matter. And sometimes it was nothing more than either a planning report and a council decision or something along that line. Do you see a pro or a con from Huron East's perspective?
That question directed to me, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, yes, it is. Sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. No. I certainly, from my standpoint, people don't like the LPAT. They didn't like the OMB. Not sure whether they liked the previous version of it, which was changed shortly after I think the Ford government came into power. But I think at the end of the day, there's going to be some appeal body that's going to be available with respect to planning matters. And I don't necessarily think anyone's going to ever like it or dislike it one way or the other. So, I mean, if council wants, we've got both options there for a motion. If council just wants to note and file this, that's great. The second piece I would add on to what your comments were, Mr. Mayor, is that they obviously have some concern with the LPAT as it currently exists, but they haven't underlined what their particular, I guess, beef or well, not even what their particular issue is with the LPAT that they've experienced and why they're making this request. So,
yeah. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would go for noting and file this. I think there needs to be something in place for the rare occasion when a community's right or a protagonist is right, whatever. I'd much rather have this than have something unknown, that especially when the government's doing all these ministers' orders, et cetera, et cetera. I would just like to note and file this.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Second by Councillor Chartrand. Any final comments or questions? Okay, then the motion is that Council of the Municipality of Huron East note and file the motion from the town of Aurora regarding the request to the province to dissolve the Ontario Land Tribunal. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that because that second half of that motion was long. There's nothing under unfinished business this evening, nothing under municipal drains. We are down to planning. And go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Yeah, I just think I'd like to take this brief opportunity here just to introduce Jen Burns. So as council's aware, Laura Simpson, our planner, is now on her mat leave, and Jen has stepped in. She comes from Morris Turnberry, and I will just want to read a brief little bio on her if I can. If I can find it quick enough again. Here we go. So just a quick bio. Jen started with Huron County Planning Department, Development Department as a planning student in 2016. She then took on a contract position as now a full-time planner with the department. Most recently, Jen provided planning service to the Township of Howick and the municipality of Morris Turnberry. Jen and her husband Darren live on a farm outside of Drayton. She's very much looking forward to working with staff and council and the residents of the municipality here in East. And I just want to welcome you, Jen, on behalf of staff and certainly on behalf of council here on East.
Thank you.
Jen.
Thanks very much, and nice to meet everyone, albeit virtually tonight. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
So go ahead, Jen. You have the floor to do any presentation if there is one at this point.
That's perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen here. 1 second. Are you able to see that okay?
Yes.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so our first consent application is consent C08 of 2022. And this application is for a surplus farmhouse severance. The address is 42911 991 McKillop Road in Huron East. And here's an air photo of the subject property. So the severed portion is 2.7 acres in size and is designated agriculture and zoned AG1. The retained parcel is 59 hectares in size. And as I mentioned, it is a surplus residence severance. The severed land does contain a house, garage, and a shed, and the farmland is to be acquired by a farm operation to whom the house is surplus. So here's an air photo showing the proposed severed parcel. So it's the 2.7 acres that I had mentioned, and then the retained parcel, which is approximately 146 acres in size. This is an air photo here of the surplus farmhouse parcel. And as you can see here, there's the house, the drive shed, and the garage. And this is the sketch provided by the applicant. Again, just showing the location of the buildings on the severed parcel. So there are no outstanding concerns with this application. It does meet all of the criteria and is recommended to be approved with the standard conditions outlined in the planning report. So the conditions are outlined here. I won't go through them all, but they're all the standard ones for a surplus farmhouse severance. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of council to Jen at this point? Okay, seeing none. It still has Laura's name on here, but not that that matters. If there are no questions, then I take it we go straight to the motion. So can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Councillor Steffler, that Council of the Municipality of Huron East acknowledge the report of Huron County Planner. Now I'm going to say Jen Burns presented. Oh, sorry. County Planner Laura Simpson presented by Jennifer Burns, dated February 9th, 2022, and has no objection to severance application C08-22 of Craig and Blaine Hackwell, John David Murray for concession 11 and 12, lot 23, McKillop Ward, provided the following conditions are met. And those were all the conditions that were listed in the report. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have 12.2.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just share my screen again here. Okay, so this is consent C11 of 2022 for Vista Villa Farms. The address is 44440 and 44520 Hullet McKillop in Huron East. And this is an air photo of the property. So the farm is right on the corner with road frontage on to Hullet McKillop and Manly Line. The purpose of this application is to sever a new farm parcel. And so the area severed is proposed to be 100 acres. And the area retained will be 150 acres. Both are farms. The one property does have some livestock barns on the parcel. And then the severed lands do contain a house on there as well. So there's a house on the severed and there's a house on the retained. And the lands are designated agriculture and natural environment in the Huron East official plan. This application does meet all of the policy criteria for an agricultural severance, and there are no outstanding concerns from a policy perspective, and no comments have been received on the application. So this is just an air photo here showing the existing livestock barn operation, and then the existing house. There's the one house with the barns, and then the other house on the proposed severed parcel. So this application, as I mentioned, there's no outstanding concerns. It is recommended to be approved with the conditions that are outlined in the planning report. Again, there's they are the pretty standard list of conditions here. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Jen. Jen, just a quick question. Since that the two farms are being separated now or severed, does that the new severance, does it affect the ability of the old farm, say for an expansion of barns? Does that affect that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So once the house on the severed parcel is on a separately conveyable parcel, the minimum distance separation for that livestock operation will need to be met to that house. As it exists today, there are no concerns, but once that severance does happen, and if there were to be quite a large expansion or what have you, and the farmer would not be able to meet the MDS distance to that house, that would be a concern. I'm just looking at the air photo here, and it does look like there is already a house across the road from the retained parcel. I might just share my screen quickly here so that you can see. So the house that is currently, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it looks like there's a house across the road here as well, which is closer to the livestock operation likely than the house on the severed portion. So this part here would likely restrict the livestock operation before the house on the separate severed parcel here would. Not being too familiar with the application, as it is one that was handled before I came on. I'm not sure all the intricacies there, but the house to the south of the road there would likely impact the expansion of that livestock facility before the house on the severed parcel would.
Thank you.
Any other questions of members of council? Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Dalton. That the Council of the Municipality of Huron East acknowledge the report of Huron County Planner Laura Simpson presented by Jennifer Burns dated February 9th, 2022, and has no objection to severance application C11-22 of Vista Villa Genetics Limited. Sorry, I thought I heard someone ask me to stop. Farms Limited for concession 13 West Park, Lot 4, Lot 5, McKillop Ward, 42520 Hullett McKillop Road and 44440 Hullett McKillop Road, provided the following conditions are met: that the conditions imposed be met within the 2 years of date of notice of decision as required by section 5341 under the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, that all municipal requirements, financial and otherwise, be met to the satisfaction of the municipality. For example, servicing connections, cash in lieu of park dedication, property maintenance, compliance with zoning and bylaw provisions for structures. That $750 be paid to the municipality as cash in lieu of parkland. That a survey showing the lot lines of the severed parcel and the location of any buildings thereon and the reference plan based on an approval survey be provided to the satisfaction of the municipality. That where a violation of a municipal zoning bylaw is evident, the appropriate minor variance or rezoning be obtained to the satisfaction of the municipality, and that section 65 of the Drainage Act be addressed to the satisfaction of the municipality. Any final comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Jennifer, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
We are down to council member reports. County Council, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The golf course severance, the 7 acres that were to be severed to the new purchaser or whatever, has been deferred at county council till the 15th, I think, Mr. Mayor, wasn't it? The property McPherson's did not get notice of this, and they were able to prove it through mail that they got about something else. So they're complaining about the planned use of water and sewer and entranceway. So there's some discussion going on there, and it's supposed to come back to county on the, again, I think it's the 15th for some reason.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date, but I know there was a specific date put on the actual motion to defer because we did not want to drag this out. And I do believe the planners did express the fact that there was communications between the two parties and that hopefully that was going to get ironed out. So, yeah.
Going forward, yeah. And then the other one, we had a lovely 4-hour budget meeting on the 9th and ended up going to have another budget meeting. So things are progressing.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to add, and thanks to Councillor McClellan for reminding me. So this has nothing to do with the Plowman's Association, but this shocked me. You know, we talk about the fact that Huron County is probably the largest producer of agriculture in southwestern Ontario, for sure, maybe the entire province. But what shocked me is we had a report last week from Economic Development. And I'm pretty sure most of this council is quite familiar with Vicki Lass, who worked for OMAFRA. And Vicki was able to get, with her contacts, a lot of information that helped out the economic development with a report they brought forward. There is about $6 billion in receipts from Huron County every year. Less than 30% of that is actually farm. I was shocked at the amount of business that is done by industry, commercial, for other things such as, you know, whether you call it entertainment, your bed and breakfast, your restaurants, your hotel, stuff like that. If you had asked me prior to reading the report, I'd have guessed that farming was 80–85% of all the receipts in Huron East or Huron County, and it's nowhere near that. It was quite shocking, and they even talked about the number of people employed in all these different industries. And the interesting part is that there are 2 people employed in farming for every 1 in industry. Or was it maybe the other way around? I have to go back and look at the report again. But that information will be coming to County Council also. And there was some really striking numbers that showed up there that I never would have expected. So I don't have anything else from County Council at this point, although I'm really hopeful, Bob, that we will come to a resolution tomorrow on the budget.
Yeah, you tired of horse dragging?
No, I think we've had some really good discussion, but I think the council as a whole is getting a lot closer to making it a decision.
Yeah.
So, are there any other committees, boards, meetings, or seminars that anybody wants to report on at this time? Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow is our Maitland Valley Conservation Authority annual meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. It starts at 2. It's probably going to be about an hour long. So if anybody is interested at all, if you contact me, I'm not sure if our office has the Zoom link or not, but we could certainly get that if somebody was interested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that info. Are there any requests by any members of council this evening? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I asked in November, I'm not sure if staff could look at the 2 green initiatives that county passed, the single serve one and the more recent one about going forward in a more green manner, and with the hope being that we would adopt these 2 initiatives as well. And I just wondered if staff had had any time to look at that going forward.
I don't see anybody jumping up with any answer. Go ahead, Brad.
Certainly I can speak to it. I think I'm in the process of actually drafting our service review RFP. And I've incorporated some of those components into that in terms of looking at the service review is supposed to look at what types of services we could or should provide to lead us through the future, and what would be required to do that. And I believe that's probably the best venue for us to look at that, Deputy Mayor Fisher, rather than me, who has, I guess I would say I would call it limited knowledge in terms of how best to bring forward green initiatives. I think we can sort of look at that RFP helping us determine how best to potentially bring that forward, and likely work in conjunction with some of the Huron County initiatives as well. There's been a lot of talk, I guess I would say, within my professional association about climate change and green initiatives, I guess I'll call it. But I don't think anybody's really been concrete in terms of how they want to move forward, and certainly having a strategic plan that speaks to the concept of making sure that's a key component of how we do business would be a big part of that as well. If that helps answer your question, Deputy Mayor.
Well, okay, that being the way we go, then I definitely would suggest we look at these two initiatives at the county. They were very well done and not onerous by any means, but very well thought.
Okay. Are there any other requests by members? Seeing none, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Any information items that, no, sorry, those are the next ones. So any announcements of members of council at this time? Okay, thank you for that. We are down to the information items.
So the first one, there's a letter we've got from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Certainly it looks as if the provincial government's looking for opportunities to try and increase the supply of housing throughout Ontario. And Mayor McClellan and I also had a conversation earlier this evening in very much in context of this, tying in a little bit to our Brussels subdivision, and there might be an opportunity for us to look at this and how that might fit into that project. I don't know if you want to add anything more to it, Mr. Mayor, in terms of where we could go with this, but I will reach out to the housing supply at ontario.ca to see if there is some opportunity there for us to partner with the provincial government, or at least the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Yeah, the only thing I really want to add to that is, so the administration committee has had a meeting about the property in Brussels, and I do believe we are going to meet again next week, just to make sure that we're going down the right path. There was a lot of things that we discussed. There was a lot of good ideas that came out, and we just want to make sure we are doing the right thing moving forward here. And when I read this information, I was excited about the fact that the province wanted to help, but it was pretty vague in the letter of what that help actually would be. So as the CAO pointed out, he said to me that when I commented about it, that if we were going ahead and doing the actual infrastructure, and they were willing to do some sort of financial support along with that, that could be very beneficial to the project overall. But again, those are things that we can have in our discussion at the next administration meeting next week. And then hopefully very shortly after that, we'll have some sort of report coming back to council to get council's blessing on a direction of what to do moving forward with that property in Brussels. I guess the only other thing that I see in there, there was the council expenses and the report from the minutes from the Economic Development Committee. Did anybody have any questions on either of those reports? Okay, seeing none. Down to other business, recommendations from the Huron East Economic Development Committee on February 9th. Who would like?
Mr. Mayor, we'd get a motion to accept the minutes first before we move that one.
Sorry. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Deal, that Huron East Council received the following board and committee meeting minutes as submitted. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. So I'll let somebody else take on 15.1 at this point.
So certainly I can speak to it, or I can let our chair, Councillor Dill, speak to the minutes if she wants and the recommendation we came forward. Either way, Councillor, I'd be more than happy.
I'll let you have at it, Mr. CEO.
Okay, good, thanks. So we did receive 5 proposals, which is a good number. And then they were all good proposals. The committee and myself scored those proposals, I guess what I'll call independently. They provided those scores to me. I summarized them in a table. We compiled the averages of all the scores. In the end, we had, of the 5 firms, I think we ended up with making the recommendation for McSweeney Consulting Company Limited. I can't remember their name. It's probably in the motion. The amount for that recommendation is about $50,000, just shy of $50,000 for the consulting work for the Economic Development Strategic Plan. They had the highest technical score. They had the highest overall score when you considered cost. They were not the cheapest. They weren't the most expensive. I don't want to say, I will say, I'll speak about McSweeney. I don't really want to necessarily berate the other consultants, but in terms of McSweeney, they do seem to come with what I would classify as a customized approach to the municipality. They are well recognized for doing economic development strategic plans, particularly in smaller rural communities. So they have fairly strong expertise. The 2 key personnel in there are spoken about well. I did do a full reference check of those of McSweeney, and their references spoke very specifically in terms of the quality of work, the type of work they're capable of doing. And I think probably the common piece I heard from all of them, and I've heard this across the board, is that they don't do what I would call a cookie cutter approach to your strategic plan. You know, the cut and paste, put your name in and take out the former municipality's name and here you go, here's your strategic plan. So they will tailor and customize it to yourself. So I think collectively, the committee was unanimous in terms of who they were recommending forward, in terms of who their, I guess, preferred consultant was based out of the 5. And that was recognized as well through the scoring process. I'm not sure if I missed anything, Madam Chair, if you would like to add anything or if I covered that all. Happy to take any questions.
I think that covers everything. And yes, it was unanimous.
Okay, that's good. Any other questions of members of council at this time? Okay, I have a mover and a seconder, I believe. So all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. I could not have read the motion because I know the name was in the motion. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I did not read the motion as of yet. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion we just voted on? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Wilby. That the Council of the Municipality of Huron East award the work for the Economic Development Strategic Plan to McSweeney and Associates Consulting, Inc. And that was passed. Thank you very much. Number 16, bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder to introduce? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Chartrand, that be it hereby resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 15 and 16 for 2022. Bylaw 15 of 2022, a bylaw to designate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer for certain acts during a lame duck period for the corporation of the municipality of Huron East. And that's bylaw 16 of 2022, a by, oh, sorry, that's the next one. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. And a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Councillor McClellan, that be it hereby resolved that, nope, I got something mixed up here. Sorry, this is a bylaw to, this one is for the lame duck. That be it hereby resolved that bylaw 15 of 2022, a bylaw to designate authority to the chief administrative officer for certain acts during a lame duck period for the corporation of the municipality of Huron East be given first, second, third, and final reading, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. We do not have a closed session tonight, do we? No. Okay. So the confirmatory bylaw, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Morrison, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 16, 2022, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be given first, second, third, and final reading, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Deal, and all those in favor. And motion carries. 8:21, very good. That's a nice night, but I'm worried tomorrow could be a long day again. And I appreciate the offer, Councillor McClellan, but after